We're going to create millions of jobs in America. Great jobs, jobs that pay very well, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year. With health insurance, we have to create paths for the poor, for the impoverished in our country. Give them an avenue. Give them an opportunity to get to the middle class.
All right, let's kick this off. DeRoy, are you happy with how things are trending today?
Well, I'm happy to see the green than the red. You know, I might actually look at my portfolio today, perhaps. Unlike the last few days, I'm going to take a look. So that's good news. I'm glad we have 70 of these countries coming forward. That's a big number. And I think these deals, the sooner that they're finished and signed and implemented, the better. So this doesn't drag on and on. I saw a great headline from Axios today, which is the bottom line. Businesses need to plan in this environment. They can't. And this goes back to the whole question of, what kind of tariffs we're going to face, if we face any, and beyond that, what will the tax structure be next year? So I've thought all along the president should have cut taxes first, let the economy boom, and then done the tariffs afterwards. That didn't happen. So if not tax cuts before, tax cuts soon. Congress has to get focused. They should not take a day off until they put a tax bill on his desk. If you can't sign it by April 15th, tax day, he should sign it on May Day and ruin the lives of socialists.
Taxes in a hurry on May Day. Jackie, the 70 countries lining up. You got to feel good about that, right? Nothing's happened quite yet, but you got to feel good about it.
I think that interview with Larry yesterday and Bessent was really important with respect to how this market is reacting. You have Bessent coming to the table saying as many as potentially 70 countries, and I call this negotiation nuggets. This is when they start to drop them out for the market to let them know that these conversations are happening. But he makes an excellent point there, and it's a point that needs to be underscored. The question has been right now whether or not you agree with how they came up with the formula for the reciprocal tariff. I had asked Peter Navarro about this with Vietnam. Vietnam said we're going to bring, they were the first ones, one of the first ones to say, we're going to bring our tariff down to zero, America. And I asked Peter, well, what's the United States going to do? Are they going to come down to zero? And his answer basically was no, because of these tariff trade barriers. That doesn't mean, to Bessent's point, that they're not up for negotiation and conversation. But you can not like how they did the calculation, and that's math that we're talking about. But you can't deny the fact that these non-tariff trade barriers are out there. And Navarro describes them as currency manipulation, VAT taxes, export subsidies, IP theft, phony standards for agriculture, dumping, and he goes on and on. These are really, really important trade issues. So the EU coming to the table saying we'll do zero, Japan coming to the table. These are all great, but they're conversations that the president is going to, need to have now. I will also say a very smart person once told me in a difficult period in my life that you've got to get your head around things being uncomfortable for a while. And I think the market has gotten its head around that, as long as it knows that the conversations are taking place and the right conversations are taking place to level the trade playing field for our country to have some advantage back, because we were getting absolutely pummeled, Brian. I think that's where you're seeing the confidence come in. I will point out that we're off the session highs, that, we're probably going to trade sideways now, but many people are saying that yesterday was likely the bottom. Well, so you got markets needing to get their heads around uncertainty, let's say, but you got small businesses too, Cheryl, and that's actually one of the issues. So the NFIB came out with their small business survey. The business optimism index declined by 3.3 points, so it's now below its 51-year average. So you've got some small businesses, they're not the market actors here, but they're saying it's tough to make plans this year. Do you think what's happening lately, like the last day or two, is maybe helping them get comfortable with the road ahead? I don't know that the last couple of days have made anybody that comfortable. It's been certainly a wild ride since last Thursday, right? But I remember when Maria sat down with President Trump and she asked him specifically over and over, clarity. Can you give us clarity? Clarity is so crucial for Wall Street, for the business community, large companies, small companies. What's interesting now in particular with these new words coming out of China this morning, and then of course President Trump firing back, they say, okay, the Ministry of Commerce in a statement this morning was very, well, I'll just read it to you. It's the threat to escalate tariffs on China, a mistake on top of a mistake, once again exposes the blackmailing nature of the U.S. China will never accept this. China's going to fight to the end. Then, of course, you had President Trump this morning come out and say, I'm going to lay another 50% down on you. That would take China to 104%. The reason I bring up China is because those aren't the small businesses you're talking about, Brian, and they're the ones that are sourcing a lot of their
whether it's components, widgets, software, tech, whatever. They're bringing those in from China, and they certainly are nervous and should be. You've got the number one and the number two economies in the world that are a really big argument right now. And that's where the word negotiation, I think, becomes so important for markets and businesses so that we do have some clarity. And, you know, Bessent has said this isn't going to be tomorrow. It's going to probably take April, May, June. Buckle up, everybody. I think we're going to have a little bit of a stretch ahead.
So, Taylor, take us into the contours of that bargaining, that negotiation that's going to happen with China. Because, look, I mean, they're pushing back hard. They've got some real problems to solve themselves.
They do. Absolutely, and I think if anyone would come into this and say that the U.S. is in a better position than China, people would agree with us. But there are ways that they can push back. I was reading one note this morning that said it is very likely that China, which holds $760 billion of U.S. treasuries, was a significant seller of these treasuries on Monday. A reminder to U.S. officials that China, which is the second largest holder of U.S. treasuries, has other means to retaliate to our tariff measures. So if we're going after them on tariffs and they know that we have to refinance our debt pretty soon, they can say, gotcha, we're going to dump a bunch of treasuries, see how your yields go, and good luck refinancing.
So can I ask you a question on that? Where do they?
You may.
Okay, so let's say they dump, because I've heard this, we've heard this for years, right? Dump treasuries.
Yeah.
Where do they park all their capital then?
Well, I don't know if this was confirmed, but they have what they call a national team. They literally go in and buy the stock market. The government does when it falls below a threshold. They literally call it the national team. That could be one area. I don't know. I haven't looked into what they did with the money on Monday. But that is one way that they could try to hurt us if they wish. I'm glad that Jackie brought up some of the European conversations, because I was asked this yesterday and I didn't have a good answer to it. But when Europe says they want to do 0 for 0 tariffs, for the industrial base, they said yes, but they're taking agriculture off the table. They won't negotiate with us when it comes to that. Pharmaceuticals, Stephen Moore was writing about this in the Unleash Prosperity hotline. We dominate R&D when it comes to big pharma, yet we have a $116 billion trade deficit with them with pharma because they import price controls. So that's the stuff where I think people in America are looking at and saying, you don't want to come to zero. You don't want to get rid of price controls. You don't want to tell me that ag could be on the table. So they're talking to us about industrial, which is great, but I think Americans want 0 for 0 tariffs across the board. So, Jackie, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I've been confused when it comes to Europe, and Stephen Moore this morning was able to sort of lay it out for me a little bit.
I also just want to follow up on a point that you're making about treasury yields. If China, in fact, was selling bonds and pushing that yield higher, that flies in the face of obviously what President Trump wants and part of one of the bright spots we were calling it in this market. The Wall Street Journal just writing about that now, saying stocks are in turmoil, but treasury yields are stubbornly high. And the explanation that they give in the Journal is that let's see, I just want to get to the right spot. The answer might be that bond traders are reflexively pricing in the simplest scenario, a short-term economic shock followed by a rapid return to the status quo. Bonds are also being pulled in two different directions. Fears of recession are mounting, but tariffs raise the prospect of higher or stickier inflation. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is because I think it's important that while we're in that period of uncertainty, even if the markets get their head around it, there's a limited amount of time to work this out where that certainty can become a little bit more clear. Because when you've got push and pull in the bond market, that flies directly in the face of what he wants to try to accomplish as part of the overall strategy.
As far as timing goes, you're talking about price controls. Imagine the British National Health Service saying, well, okay, we have to renegotiate all of our prices for the drugs, which they keep very low because they're a socialist system. I don't see that as something that's going to change in a couple of weeks. I mean, that seems like a very, very, very difficult thing to go into these big national health systems, get the parliaments on board, keep the people calm. We're used to paying, $1 or $2 for drugs as opposed to 10 or 15 if they go up. That does not seem like an easy negotiation. That could drag this on for a long time.
Timing is of the essence, as they say.